Good morning, good evening. So here we are for the fifth talk in the series. And I hope you've been thinking about what we've talked about in the previous talks. It's quite pertinent to our life, and kind of really setting the foundation for our Dharma practice. And, when we really think about the 8 worldly concerns, then our attitude towards life changes, our relationship changes. Things change a lot. And at first, that might be a little bit unnerving for people because you relinquish a lot of the things you used to enjoy doing. And some of the things you did with your old friends, you're not so interested in doing anymore. And your old friends aren't so interested in meditating. And so you are trying to figure out who are your friends, what's your social circle, and so on. And that's all very, very natural. That happens to everybody when they start really practicing Dharma. So don't worry about that. But it does... It's shaky because we're really starting to swim upstream at that point. Yeah. And so you can tell that it's really Dharma practice when your ego feels uncomfortable. Okay. When ego and self-centered mind feel very relaxed and comfortable, be suspicious. Okay. When they feel uncomfortable, when they feel challenged, when they feel threatened, then you know that you're getting somewhere in your practice. Okay? Because this kind of stuff has to come up. Because we need to change. I mean, we come to Dharma because we know something's not right in our lives and it needs to change. But when things start to change, then we go, but, I don't know who I am, and this is too much change, and, can't it change in a way that makes my ego feel good? Yeah, so, this is how it is, but it's really an indication that you're taking the teachings to heart, and just give yourself space to get used to a new perspective. Yeah. And it takes time, and it's fine, and you'll make new friends. And sometimes your old friends will come around, and sometimes they won't. But if you really want to go bowling with them, I hear in Georgia, they're opening the bowling alleys today. So you can go bowling with them and get the COVID-19 free of charge, thanks to the governor of Georgia. This is Georgia the state, not Georgia the country. I hope Georgia the country is a bit more sane than Georgia the state. Anyway, I don't know if there's any Georgians listening. Maybe they're all out getting their, you can go to the nails done. You can get your nails done today and your hair cut and go to the tanning and go to the gym. Yes? Yes. So, that all makes ego feel quite good. But what ego feels good about isn't necessarily good for us. Either right now in the middle of COVID-19 outbreak, but also in the middle of samsara. Yeah. So just give yourself time and space to change, and you'll adjust, and everybody will adjust, and it's fine. Yeah. Okay, but do think about these things, and when when you feel challenged, it's good to discuss these things with Dharma friends. That's why we have discussion groups at the Abbey and during our courses, so people can get together and, really share their experiences. Because sometimes we feel, oh, I'm the only one, nobody else is attached to praise and approval like I am. Nobody else is suffering like I am after this talk on praise and approval. Let me tell you, everybody is attached to praise and approval and hates blame, okay? Blame and disapproval. You're not alone. But talking this over with other Dharma friends really brings that out in the open, and it's very helpful. Yeah, and it's a way of being transparent about, where we're at. So we're not trying to put on any, what do you call it? Any show that we're great, grand yogis. We're just talking about where we're at and how we're working with the Dharma teachings right now in our life. And, how we're working with our mind and trying to change. Okay, so it's not about appearances. It's not about plastering on a good face and looking holy. It's just about, being transparent, being who we are, and being totally okay with it. Yeah. Because why not? We're always trying to cover up our faults, aren't we? But everybody knows our faults. So who are we trying to hide them from? Huh? And people know our good qualities too. So, why are we so, I'm not saying go brag about our good qualities, but why are we so sure we don't have any at all? That's totally unrealistic. Okay, so let's start with our recitations. And remember, we're creating a whole scene here, a whole experience when we do the recitations. Okay? Because all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are in front of us. And all sentient beings, including, you can fill in the blank, either people you know personally or people, on the world stage. Friends, enemies, strangers, all of them are there, wanting happiness, not wanting suffering. And we're leading all of them to take refuge. Yeah. So it's a very wonderful thing to think about, even if these people probably will never, at least this life, take refuge. To think that, we're visualizing this, and, maybe one day they will, or maybe in a future life they will. And, we can help them in the Dharma then. Let's again recall our dependence on other living beings. that our ability to stay alive depends on their kindness. All we know, all of our skills, our education, all of this depends on the kindness of other living beings. And our ability to attain awakening also depends on other living beings. So remembering this, try to let go of the judgmental mind that puts people in categories and considers them hopeless and doesn't like them. Try to see them as beings like all of us who want happiness and not suffering, but who are overwhelmed by ignorance, anger, and attachment. Beings who are unhappy and trying to be happy, but in their ignorance do things that harm themselves and harm others. So it's not really that they mean bad towards others. So they're completely confused under the power of ignorance. So let yourself have some compassion for them. And then thinking of the great opportunity you have, having a precious human life, to learn and practice the Dharma. Take the responsibility to help them in the Dharma. And so aspire for full awakening so that you can do this most easily and most completely. So there were a number of questions from yesterday. I'll try and go through them quickly so we can get on to the next topic. So one person was saying that funerals also express human values, because I said the funerals we make them out to be for the person who's dead, but they're really for the person who's living. So she's saying, yeah, they express human values. We come together to express care and affection for each other. And all cultures have some kind of rite that happens when people die, and some kind of rites or mourning period that happens afterwards. Yeah, and that makes sense, because death is the biggest shock thing that we have. Although we all know it's going to happen, when it happens, we're stunned. Okay? And then somebody said, if I do certain Dharma practices, will that help people in the bardo? It can, especially making donations on their behalf and dedicating the merit for them, imagining, doing any kind of purification, whether with medicine, Buddha, Vajrasattva, and thinking that the light and nectar is flowing into them, purifying all their negativities and giving them the realizations of the Buddha. That kind of practice and visualization is, that you do for the people who have passed is very useful. And I'm sure Venerable Sangye Kadro taught about this last weekend in her course about peaceful living and peaceful dying. And those videos are they on the website yet? Or they're on live stream. Okay, so I don't know how you access live stream, but somehow you do.
Our website has links.
Oh, so go to the Sravasti Abbey website, and then you can access the videos from there. Okay.
There's a drop-down called live stream teachings.
Okay.
All those are listed.
So there's a drop-down on the Sravasti Abbey website called what?
Under Learning the Dharma.
Under Learning the Dharma, there's a drop-down on live stream, and you drop down, and then you can find all the different videos there. Okay. Then somebody asked about subtle impermanence and coarse impermanence. Coarse impermanence we can see with our eyes. A building falls down, or, there's a big change in something. But coarse impermanence doesn't happen without the ongoing process of subtle impermanence. So the example His Holiness uses is the sun setting. When the sun sets, we can watch it. It seems like the sun's moving. Actually, the earth is. But that's gross impermanence. Yeah, we can see the sun going down. But from the time the sun rises in the east and goes to the west, we don't notice that change. And that is happening very subtly in each infinitesimally small moment. Yeah. So dependent on things, changing momentarily, that's subtle impermanence. Then the big impermanence comes about. So when we're born, we're already in the process of dying, but then death is the gross impermanence that we see, but the constant changing in the body from moment to moment is the subtle impermanence that takes us from being this big to, the body from being this big to, being a corpse. Okay. They said, what about like getting holes in your socks or wrinkles on your face? Okay. So, yeah. So when your sock has a hole and you notice it, yes, that's gross impermanence. But it usually gets a hole by wearing out gradually. That's the subtle impermanence. Okay. Our wrinkles, again, subtle impermanence. And then all of a sudden we notice them. But they've been, in the process of being manufactured for a long time. Okay. So a subtle impermanence cannot be stopped. It's the nature of conditioned phenomena. And the more we're able to adapt to that reality and accept it, the more peaceful we'll be when the big gross impermanence comes our way and we're surprised that something has changed. Okay. Then, as you age, you can also lose the capacity to practice. Is all that I think there's thinking because maybe you don't have as much physical strength or you're more forgetful or like that. Is all the merit or karmic seeds of a lifelong practice lost if you lose your mental capacity through accident, illness, or age. No. The merit you create and the negative karma, unless it's purified, the seeds are on the mind stream. And even, if we lose cognitive abilities, they are still there, and they, some will ripen at the time of death and determine our future rebirth, or influence what we experience in our future lives, and so on. Okay, if we make a simplistic linear causal relationship of the causes of suffering, self-grasping gives rise to self-centeredness, gives rise to afflictions, gives rise to non-virtue. Where would the 8 worldly concerns fit in? Okay, and somebody else asks a similar question. Where do the 8 worldly concerns fit in the 12 links model? Okay, so first of all, regarding self-grasping and self-centeredness, there's 2 kinds of self-centeredness. Yeah, there's the gross one that, is associated with the 8 worldly concerns. And then there's the more subtle one, which is thinking and caring only about our own liberation. So this subtle one, thinking about only our own liberation, is quite distinct from self-grasping. So you can still have that subtle one and have eliminated self-grasping. Okay? In terms of the 8 worldly concerns, they're very much mixed in with the very gross kind of self-centeredness, because we're, 8 worldly concerns all concern me, don't they? I don't worry about anybody else's stuff so much, but mine, boy, it's a big deal. Okay? And so where do they fit in the 12 links model? Well, if we see the 8 worldly concerns as illustrations of actions done, well, they could be attitudes or they could be actions due to afflictions such as attachment and anger. Okay, then when you have the 12 links of dependent arising, you have ignorance, and then you have formative action. So afflictions aren't listed as a separate link, but they're kind of included in the first link. Although some people say they're kind of included in the second. So maybe they're some way in between the two. But I think they're more with the first one, because the ignorance gives rise to the attachment, to jealousy, to conceit, to anger and resentment, and belligerence and laziness, and the whole 9 yards. Okay? And so those mental attitudes, are the 12, are the 8 worldly concerns. And then the 8 worldly concerns, because those are mental, produce actions. Yeah, they motivate our actions. When we have attachment to approval, it motivates how we act. When we have aversion to losing our material things, that attitude motivates how we act. And so in that way, the 8 worldly concerns, directly affect the second link of karmic formations in the 12 links. Okay. Then the next one was any suggestion for helping our family and friends with attachment to us accept our request to die alone, hoping to minimize the trauma they experience as a result of our death. Well, one way is try and have a discussion with them about it and just explain your reasons, but also be aware that you can't plan your death, and things can happen very unexpectedly. But this sounds strange, but if you really don't want them there when you're dying, if you're dying of a terminal illness or something gradually, don't inform them of how serious your illness is. Yeah? And then after you die, let whoever is managing your stuff inform your family. Mm-hmm. So that's one way to do it. They may be unhappy about it, but I don't know. Some people may be happy. I remember a very specific conversation with my parents where my mother informed me by telling a story of a family friend that if I were terminally ill, actually she didn't want to know about it because it would be too painful for her. Yeah. So, we sometimes maybe the family is like that. Yeah. So it's up to you. Yeah. And then the next one, somebody's asking about dukkha and self-centeredness. So dukkha is what is commonly translated as suffering, but it doesn't mean suffering. It means unsatisfactory experiences. Okay? So those are the experiences that we have in samsara. Self-centeredness is a mental state, the subtle one that is attached to our own liberation from samsara, the gross one that is attached to the happiness of this life. Okay, next. So we were, I talked about the first death meditation with the 9-point death meditation that has 3 subpoints. Death is definite, the time of death is indefinite, and only the Dharma helps at the time of death. And each one of those 3 subpoints has its own 3 subpoints, And with the first one, we conclude that we have to practice the Dharma since death is definite. The second one, we need to practice it now without delaying because the time of death is indefinite, and we don't know, how long we have. And then third, since our body and wealth and friends and relatives are of no help to us at the time of death, we need to really practice the Dharma purely without letting ourselves be distracted by the 8 worldly concerns. So there's where the topic of the 8 worldly concerns comes in, okay? Because that's what distract us. And when we see that the 8 worldly concerns all have to do with attachment to the body, to friends and relatives, and to money and possessions, and that we can't take any of those with us, then we really see that, how useless acting out the 8 worldly concerns is, how it doesn't get us what we really want. And so the alternative then is to practice the Dharma purely. Excuse me. So sometimes when we hear about practicing the Dharma purely, there's one story that Tibetans tell about a yogi who had a thorn bush outside the front of his cave, and every time he walked out, the thorns hit him and caught his robe and everything. But he didn't want to waste his time cutting down the thorns because that had to do with the 8 worldly concerns, comfort of the body. And so he just left them there because he was so intent on practicing the Dharma. Okay. So sometimes the stories they use are a little extreme. Yeah, but the point is to get a point across to us The problem is that we take the stories really literally. Yeah. And it's like, okay, if he won't cut off the thorns on that thorn bush, because they prick him every time he goes in and out, then, I can't have an extra sandwich for lunch because that's just attachment to the 8 worldly concerns. And I can't do this and I can't do that. And I always have to walk around with my mala and be saying prayers or sitting down. And I have to go to a meeting, so I'm going to sit down and meditate and block it all out. And, I have to be doing all these religious things all the time. And I'm incredibly serious. I don't laugh because samsara is a very serious business. And I'm reborn again and again and again in this hellhole. And you get yourself all tight and worked up. Okay? Yes, I've got to practice purely. No chocolate for me. Yeah? No this, no that. And then you hear the story about practicing like your hair's on fire, which I think is one reason maybe we shave it. But, I've got to practice like my hair's on fire. When your hair's on fire, you're panicked. Yeah, that's how we think of if your hair's on fire. Yeah. We don't think of somebody calmly walking to the fire hose and, watering themselves. We think of somebody going, my hair's on fire, running around crazy, And so that's how I've got to practice. I've got to be doing Dharma all the time, crazy, like this, because my hair's on fire and I'm going to the lower realms. I just read Pabonka Rinpoche's chapters on the hell realms. And I heard that when Khyentse Song Rinpoche, when he first went to Italy, gave his first teaching in the West, he spent a whole course telling the people there they were going to hell. So it's for me too, and I'm just totally freaked out. And so I've got to be really holy. Om Mani Padme, Om Mani Padme, Om Mani. And then you became like me in my first year, where I remember talking to one monk, and we were just, chit-chatting about something, and my mind was like going crazy. I've got to get out of this conversation because I need to go meditate on compassion for you. Like, I don't want to talk to sentient beings. I've got to generate compassion for them. So get out of my way. Or this is how our mind gets, or at least how my mind got. So that's not the meaning of these stories, okay? Yeah, the stories aren't, we know how to have a panic attack by ourselves. We know how to get anxious and run around like a chicken without their head ourselves. Buddha doesn't need to teach the Dharma to encourage us to do that, okay? So when you find your mind getting tight and you're pushing yourself and judging yourself, I'm so attached to things. This is terrible. I'm so attached. I've got to cut off this attachment. When you're judging yourself and you're getting tight, just stop and think, is this the kind of mental state that the Buddha is trying to get me to have? Is this a realistic, healthy mental state? No, it's craziness. It's all my own usual emotional things, but now towards the Dharma instead of towards other stuff. Yeah. So the story, we've got to take the part of the story that is applicable to the point, and don't take the rest of the story that, we misunderstand, and that makes us crazy. Okay? So the thing is, we're all doing the best we can. Yeah. And of course, we can look and say it's not enough. I'm sure, the 10th ground bodhisattvas look at their practice and say, it's really not enough. There's Buddhas who are helping sentient beings, and I can't do that yet. My practice is insufficient. But then you read about the qualities of the 10th ground bodhisattvas, and it's like, whoa, they're way, way, way beyond us. Okay? So just know that until we become a Buddha, we can always practice more. But we gotta practice with a loving, kind mind, not with a freaked out, judgmental, tormented, guilty mind that's telling ourselves that we're such a lousy practitioner. Okay? And I say this because I don't know about you, but this is how I think many people in my cohort, the kind of first generation who heard about the evil thought of the 8 worldly concerns every day for the whole meditation course, how we responded to some of it, yeah. So we had to, you have to learn, okay, I do as much as I can, and sometimes I need to nudge myself. Sometimes I'm a little lazy. I know I could do more. So I nudge. But I don't sit there and go, you lazy son of a mama, you're going to hell, practice harder. Yeah. And get all, wound up about things. So of the 8 worldly concerns, of the various afflictions that torment us, pick the one that is, or the 1 or 2, that create the biggest mess in your life. Yeah. Work on those first. Yeah. The other ones you'll get to. But work on the biggest afflictions now. Work on the biggest ones of the 8 worldly concerns. Yeah. And then as you do that, slowly, you'll build up your confidence in being able to change, and you'll be able to do more and more. Okay? So in that process, it's also very important to rejoice at your own virtue. Yeah? And, those times where you nudge yourself to do just a little bit more, and you do that little bit, then say, I rejoice that I did that. That's good. That's progress. Yeah. I was all set to tell that person off because that's how I always act when somebody talks to me like that. And this time, I actually kept my mouth shut. Good. I rejoice. Pat yourself on the back. Give yourself some credit. See how much suffering you just saved yourself, and how much suffering you saved somebody else, and rejoice.
One thing that works for me when I feel like I've tried everything else and I'm not still sort of getting out of the rut is to ask myself, well, I didn't come here to be the same as I was outside, and I'm being the same as I was, so what am I doing?
Yeah.
So it's like a way of nudging myself, like,
yeah,
have the same mind, so what am I doing?
Yeah. That's the thing I often say to people. Did you come here to practice the Dharma, or did you come here to get your way? So it's kind of different language, but same thing you're saying, yeah. Okay, so the meditation, the second meditation on death, there's a number of different ways to do it. But one way that I find helpful is to imagine, or maybe you don't have to imagine too much, not feeling well over a period of time, going to the doctor runs some tests, yeah, they call you in. You know when they call you in that they're not saying you're okay over the phone, they're calling you in. So, what's happening? And, and you get a diagnosis that, maybe you have some untreatable illness that is either going to be chronic for the rest of your life or something that will be terminal in, within the next few years. And so just imagine that, you're sitting in the doctor's office, you get that news, you go home, how do you feel? What's going on in your mind? Yeah. And so when you first play this out, you just look at how your mind's going to work and how you're going to respond emotionally. And then think about, okay, who am I going to tell? And who don't I want to tell? And how am I going to deal with other people's reactions? And what kind of treatment do I want? Do I want the whole 9 yards? What kind of treatment do I want? And then imagine, so just think, role play in your meditation this. And then think that, as time goes on, you get more and more ill. And you're less able to do the things you used to do. You feel worse. Yeah. It affects your moods. And so how do you feel watching that whole decay process go on? This body that we've cherished, that's always been with us our whole life, is now in the process of, turning its back on us. And so how do we feel about that? And, really coming to terms with, I'm going to die. And do I have a bucket list? And what is my bucket list? And is my bucket list, just watch what your bucket list is, what your mind comes up with. Yeah. And then you may also start to think, is that really what I want to do in the time I have left? I really want to go to Disneyland? Yeah. I really want to climb Mount Everest? Really? And then imagine yourself getting sicker and sicker, and you become bedridden. And maybe you stay at home. So you can do the meditation in a variety of ways. Sometimes you're at home, having to deal with your family or whoever's taking care of you, Or sometimes it's serious. They need to put you in a nursing home. How do you feel about that? What happens to all your social relationships? Again, who do you want to know about this? How much do you want to be left alone? How are you dealing with recognizing that everything you spent your whole life building up, you're now separating from? Your family, your wealth, everything. You may imagine having financial problems in the midst of all of this. Yeah. Maybe it happens before you're 65, so you don't have Medicare, or you live in a state where they didn't expand Medicaid. Yeah. What is it, like West Virginia and some different states? Yeah. And then what are you going to do? And then imagine dying. And, maybe you're alone. You can run it sometimes, because you do this, many times in your meditation. You're alone dying. How are you going to guide your mind? What are you going to do? And then imagine other things happening. As you're getting ill, all of your family members start coming and want you to sign this and sign that and sign the other thing, because they're concerned with that you made out your will and who's going to get all your stuff. Or they come and ask you, I want this, I want that. How do you feel about that? All the stuff you worked very hard to get now, everybody sign on the dotted line here. And losing your body, and then your friends, they're all running around, going to the bowling alley and the tanning salon and out to dinner and to the movies and, and everything. And you're at home, bedridden, or you're in the nursing home. Yeah, and people don't come to visit you. Yeah. Or they come to visit you. So sometimes you run it like you're really alone. And sometimes you run it like they come to visit you. And, they spend the whole time talking about themselves and their problems. And you're sitting there trying to, work with your own mind and get used to the idea of dying. And they just stay for hours talking about their problems and the family's problems and who's doing what and who's doing this and that. Yeah? How do you feel about that? Okay. And, and then imagine the whole thing, and then the time of death is coming, and what are you going to do with your mind? Yeah, and what happens if you're in a hospital and you're in an open ward or in a double or triple room, and your roommate is playing some TV program, one of the what is it, cop and robber TV programs. I don't know what the latest TV programs are, I would say Perry Mason, but that shows my age, Or Mickey, the Three Musketeers, or, what do they show now? Some of you who are younger. What? Oh, Game of Thrones, okay. Yeah, so I don't know what that one's about. But anyway, your roommate, you're trying to die. Yeah. And your roommate's playing Game of Thrones or Fox News. Yeah, there's Laura Ingraham or what, Sean Hannity right there with you as you're dying. Or they're playing a clip of what Donnie said at the latest news conference. Yeah. And, all of that is totally within the realm of possibility, isn't it?
But that would help you. Bye, everybody. I'm gone.
Yeah. Get me out of here, ASAP. But, yeah. So, you play it out in these different ways and watch what your mind is doing. Watch your emotions and what your mind is saying and what you're afraid of and what you're holding on to. I really want this relative to have my gold watch, but the other one, that's this one sibling, is vying for it, and they're going to take it, but I want this other one to have it. Yeah, isn't it? So, imagine this and watch what your mind's doing. And then, so you get a clear picture of what your mind's doing. Then go back and think, okay, how am I going to practice the Dharma? If those situations happen and my mind starts going south like that, filled with fear and anxiety and attachment and anger, how am I going to practice? What am I going to do? What thought training technique do I need to remember at that time to balance my mind? Yeah. And go through the whole thing again, but this time you're practicing. So it's not just you say to yourself, oh, let go, let go. But what thought training technique is going to enable you to let go? Okay? What are you going to remember that will help you let go really from your heart, so that you don't die worrying about that or thinking about that or upset about that? And what happens if you die? If as you're dying, you think of somebody who you fought with many years ago and you haven't spoken to since? Yeah? And you haven't forgiven them and you haven't apologized to them? What's going to happen if the thought of them comes up in your mind as you're dying? Or they call you, on the same day you're dying, but earlier in the day. Have we done our work of forgiving the people we need to forgive and apologizing to the people that we need to apologize to? Or do we want to die holding a grudge? Or do we want to die feeling guilty? In other words, how much of, because life batters us around a good deal, how much have we really made peace with what we've experienced in our lives so that we can let it go because it doesn't take up our mental energy anymore? And so really, when you do this meditation, especially about relationships with people, who do you need to apologize to? Who do you need to forgive? And don't expect them to accept your apology. Yeah. Don't expect any kind of response from them, because the forgiving and apologizing is something that we've got to get clear in our own mind. It's not dependent on their response. Yeah. If I need to apologize to somebody, it's because I realize that what I did was done under the influence of afflictions, and it caused pain, and it made me create a lot of negative karma, and I regret that. Yeah. And I want the other person to know, if they're still alive. Sometimes they aren't, then we just talk to them in our meditation. We may want to call them, we may want to write a letter, we may not want to do either of those because maybe they aren't ready to talk to us. Yeah. But at least starting today, start to clear up those things, because we don't know when death is going to come. So don't think I'll do all my apologizing and forgiving the day before I die. Yeah. Because, we may like to organize things and plan things out, but death, befuddles us. We can't do that for death. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, use that to really see, how am I going to practice? How am I going to work with these 8 worldly concerns? How am I going to remember to take refuge? Because they say it's, take refuge when you die. During my life, do I remember to take refuge? When somebody criticizes me, do I take refuge? Do I even think about refuge? Or is my MO attack back? Or go to my room and cry? So how am I going to work with these things? So this really makes us practice the Dharma and work things out. And as we do, what we're doing is we're purifying negative karma. We're creating virtue. We're protecting our mind from ingraining these bad habits deeper and deeper. Okay? And so it's very, very beneficial. And this is really what Dharma practice is about, is changing the mind. And then, as you do this and you see the different things that can come up in your mind and you practice working with them, then again you gain more confidence because you can then begin to remember some of these antidotes during your life too. Yeah, because you know that we're creatures of habit, and the more that we habituate and familiarize ourselves with certain ways of thinking and certain ways of acting now, the greater the chance that we're going to think and act like that at the time of death.
When you say taking refuge, I always wondered about the feeling. For me, feeling like you say some people take refuge in the fridge instead of the Buddha. I'm one of those. I know how it feels. I think, the food and all of that. With the Buddha, I don't connect so much. And I'm one of them that never think of taking refuge. It's not part of it. But I would like to develop that. So what is the feeling like? Okay, I see the Buddha, but what my heart is feeling.
Yeah. Okay. I think the way I do it, this is just my personal thing, okay, is the Buddha is my best friend. Yeah. The Buddha is my best friend. So I can completely relax. And it's a best friend, that not only can I be totally transparent with, but somebody who cares for me. And somebody who's going to give me good advice. So somebody I can trust. Yeah. And the Buddha is not going to go on and on again, off again. Sorry, I'm busy today. Come back later. The Buddha's always available in my meditation as my best friend.
When you share that, the image of one of my teacher, that in school, I that I don't like to study and all that, but this teacher, my math scores went to 90%, and she had the way of getting to my heart and make me believe in myself.
Yes.
So when you said that, that's what I need.
That's the feeling.
The feeling that
yes.
I'm loved and this person will help me to go to the right place.
Right. And this is where I belong. Yeah. This is where I belong. Because I remember one experience. I was working with somebody. And again, it was somebody that I, trusted and completely blasted me. Totally blasted me in a way that was really uncalled for. And that night we were doing Sok Puja. So when it came time to visualize the field of merit, it really came to me, the field of merit, these are the people, these are where I belong. I belong with people like this. And these are people who understand me, people who are going to guide me in the right direction, who I can trust. So somebody, blasted me in a way that really wasn't called for. I don't need to worry about that. Yeah, because, this is where I belong. And these are the people who are going to guide me and help me and who care about me. Yeah? So very helpful that way. You still what?
Love the fridge.
Oh. We have to work on that one. Okay. So the second attachment, we are speeding along here. Yeah? Is attachment to the three realms of samsara. Okay? And he says, as an antidote to the second, reflecting on the faults of samsara. Okay. So again, this is not a topic that most people like thinking about, but for myself, I actually found it very relieving to think about this, because so often in our culture we're told, you've got to be happy, and like you've got to be happy, and you've got to be and no, I remember, as a young person, I thought about what happens after you die and what's the purpose of my life. And, you're young and you have these things going for you. You have certain things going for you when you're young, but you want to have the things going for you that you have when you're old. But then when you get old, you don't have the things that were going for you when you were young. And so, whether you're old or young, you're never satisfied, and people never respect you enough, and you can never get what you want, And I was thinking about all of this, and you look around in the world and you see all this suffering. And so I was actually quite relieved when my teachers started talking about the defects of samsara, because it was like, oh, okay, finally somebody's willing to talk about this. Yeah. Somebody's willing to talk about the fact that eventually we're going to die. And what does that mean? And, somebody's going to talk about the fact that, life changes on us very quickly and we can't control it. Yeah. Instead of people just saying, oh, but that happens to everybody else. It won't happen to you. Or get over it, kid. Or whatever, I was just so relieved that, okay, now I can talk about these things with people. So, some of the things we think about aren't so pleasant, but we know that they're there. And if we can talk about them, it's a huge relief, a bigger relief than if we have to stuff it down and pretend on your Facebook page that your whole life is wonderful, and look at me here doing this, and look at me there doing that, and my life is fantastic. Aren't you jealous of me? And, creating that Facebook personality that isn't you at all, but sure looks good. Yeah? I mean, what do we really want to do? What makes us more honest, real person? Okay? So, thinking about the defects of samsara. If you're somebody who likes lists, Buddhism is really the religion for you, because we have lists of everything. So in terms of the defects of samsara, we have the 3 types of dukkha, and then we have the 6 types of dukkha, and then we have the 8 types of dukkha. Okay, and I'm sure there's even more that I haven't studied about, but it just talks about our experience in samsara. And it gives us a realistic picture. And by having this realistic picture, we don't get fooled. Yeah, we don't get fooled. And we can see that this is a lot of where a lot of people go wrong in their lives, because They really think that samsara is going to give them everlasting happiness. And they really think that by pushing through everything and obliterating all of their competitors and blaming everybody else for everything and being rich and being famous and doing all this, they really think that that's going to make them happy. And it's very sad to see. Yeah. Because it's all a big show. Yeah. Of course, they think that it's not a show, and they keep playing it. But it really helps us to think about what's valuable in our life. Okay? So let's do the 6 first. Yeah? So the 6, it starts out, first one is there's no certainty. Like, oh yeah, that is really true, isn't it? There's absolutely no certainty in samsara. We make a lot of plans, we make a lot of arrangements, but we can't control all the causes and conditions to make something happen. So things are uncertain. And we've all had the experience of working hard for something and then something comes and interferes and we can't get it. Yeah? Haven't we all had that experience? You know? Or we thought, this job, this is the one that's going to do it. I'm going to get to use all my talents and abilities. This relationship, I'm sure this is the person that I'm going to love forever and ever, who's going to love me forever and ever. You know, this, whatever it is this is it. And yet none of those things are certain. Yeah. Because why aren't they certain? Because they are dependent on causes and conditions. You know, and causes and conditions change all the time. Their very nature is impermanence. Yeah, so causes and conditions are going to change, so our experiences are going to change. And not only the external experience is going to change, our experience is going to change. Our feelings, you know. We say, this is the perfect relationship. But then 10 years down the line, we're the one who wants to separate. Okay? Yeah. So all these things, there's no certainty. Or it's a great relationship and then somebody dies young. How often does that happen? We're reading a lot about it now, you know, just couples, you know, doctor and doctor couples, or doctor and nurse couples, nurse and nurse couples, you know, they have 1 or 2 children, they're both working at the hospital. You know, it was fantastic. They were young, they were bright, they had their whole lives in front of them. And now they're wondering, you know, if we die, who's going to take care of our kid? Okay? So there's no certainty in our life. Yeah, we have to be ready for anything, and anything can happen. Mm-hmm. Second defect of samsara is that there's no satisfaction. So Mick Jagger knew what he was talking about. You know, I can't get no satisfaction. And on this thing, this One Globe thing, this fundraiser they did for the World Health Organization, the Rolling Stones was on it, and they were playing this song of "You Can't Always Get What You Want." You know? I was like, hey, Mick Jagger, you know, really knew he was talking about. Well, maybe. But yeah, there's no satisfaction. And we can't always get what we want. And we see with what we get one thing and we want more. Yeah, we get something, we want better. So our mantra is more and better, more and better, more and better, more and better. Yeah? And then we compete with other people, and, our reputation is involved, and on, because there's no satisfaction. Yeah? Always have to get another higher position. Always have to get more money. Always have to appear to be a bigger shot, or have more power, or be more beautiful, or break the world record, These sports stars, I'm sure Kobe probably wanted, can't I have one more game where I can really, have more baskets than I had before. All these kinds of things. Yeah. So whatever it is, more and better. Whoever has enough money? Do you know anybody who has enough money? Yeah. Because if you're going to save for your old age, which is assuming you're going to live that long, how much do you need to be comfortable in your old age? Do you have a certain amount that when you have that amount, you have stability and comfort, and so you will relax and you're satisfied with how much you have? Can you cite a number that for sure is going to give you that satisfaction? No. We could always use a little bit more because there might be inflation, and I might have, several illnesses at one time, and, I might want this kind, the prices may go up, and I may live to be 145, and so I need more money, and no satisfaction. We never have enough money, so give up worrying about it. Okay. Yes, we need money to live. Yeah, I'm not saying we don't need money. You need money to live, but don't worry about having enough, because you're never going to reach that amount. Mm-hmm. Third of the 6 is we die repeatedly. So samsara, we die. Fourth one is we get reborn. So as long as we're under the influence of ignorance, we die, we get reborn. We die, we get reborn. You would think we would be bored with it, because we don't like doing the same thing over and over again, do we? The carpet gets dirty, you have to clean it. It gets dirty, you have to clean it. How boring. I die and I get reborn. I die and I get reborn. Oh, but maybe in my next life I can have this and that and the other thing, and I can satisfy this and I can attain that. We don't get bored with it. And yet they say, regarding all samsaric experience, been there, done that, got the t-shirt. And we still want more. Yeah. So it's amazing, It's really like you're on the merry-go-round or the Ferris wheel, yeah. Or better yet, you're on the Matterhorn. Yeah. Been to Disneyland on the Matterhorn? And no. And you don't know whether to scream or throw up, because you can't do both at the same time. Okay. And we want more. We want more. We think that's fun. Isn't that interesting, what we think is fun? Yeah. I marveled at when there was the shooting in Colorado during the, what was it? Batman movie. Okay? Because one young man came here and he was in the theater at that time. And, you know, everybody's in that theater watching this movie, and there's so much violence, you know. Batman's beating people up and other people are beating each other up, and they're jumping here and flying there and stabbing each other and doing this and that, because it's an action movie. And so much violence, and that's entertainment. But as soon as the gunman came in and started shooting real live bullets in the audience, it was no longer entertainment. Now, I want to know, why is watching Batman entertainment? And watching it in real life is horror. Well, why do we think violence is entertaining? You know? Anyway, you know, our samsaric minds are so confused, you know, so confused. Fifth one, we change status all the time. So we change status between one life and the next. We're born in the hell realm, we're born in the God realm, we're born in this realm, that realm, going up and down and up and down and up and down in samsara. In one lifetime, we change status. Yeah, depending on what's going on, for example, in the country we live in. Yeah, you may be very rich. There's a communist revolution in your country. They throw you in prison and take your wealth. Yeah, you may be very poor, but you're clever and you know how to manipulate people, so you can make yourself rich. So your status is going up and down and up and down, and there's no stability in that either. Yeah, one time you're famous, then they find out what you've really been doing. Your reputation goes down. I was on pilgrimage one time in China, traveling with some Chinese friends, so it wasn't a foreign pilgrimage thing. And we were having tea at a little chai shop out in the countryside. And there was a picture of the Gang of Four on the wall. This was way after the Gang of Four had been, you know, their status had gone down. You know, they got in trouble. But somebody still had the picture of them on the wall. And my Chinese friends looked, because all four of those people were dead by then, and said, you know, these people are probably in the hell realm. So there, the picture is in the human realm, still up on the wall, the Gang of Four when they were in power. Their experience now, probably in the hell realm. Yeah, so you have power, and then you're in hell. You know, there's no stability in any of this. And then the sixth one is that ultimately we're alone in samsara. There's no lasting samsaric friend that can always be with us and hold our hand and protect us. Yeah, so when we're born alone. When we suffer, yeah, there may be other people suffering like us. Yeah, so we say misery loves company. What a thing to wish for other people. Yeah. But when we die or when we experience suffering, our own negative, you know, unpleasant feelings, painful feelings, are experienced by ourselves alone. Nobody else can come and take them away from us. So we have to learn how to manage our own mind. Yeah? Because nobody else can do it for us. So, you know, and you think of the many ways people die, and how many people die alone. I think of people fighting wars, which I think is one of the most stupid things human beings have ever done, is fight wars. And you're there dying on the battlefield, and, you know, the war's raging around you, and nobody's there to help you. They're all, you know, maybe a medic comes when it's all over, but maybe they're taking care of other people. You know, you're dying alone on the battlefield. With the COVID-19, what they're saying now is, you know, people are dying alone in negative pressure rooms. Their family can't come and visit them because there's too much risk of infection for the family. So Elizabeth Warren's older brother died just, I guess it was yesterday, maybe, or today. And, you know, and her comment was, you know, he was 80-something, but she said, you know, I feel sad that nobody was there with him at the last time, and nobody was able to say, I love you one more time. Yeah. And that's the way samsara is. Yeah. So how do we make peace if we're that person in in the hospital bed, and, you know, nobody's going to hold our hand and say, I love you. How do we make peace with that? And even if they did, do you really want people around you holding your hand saying, I love you, when you're in the process of separating from everything? I think much better get all of that done beforehand, you know? Say your goodbyes, make peace with everything beforehand, and then, you know, just be able to let go. That's what I'm feeling, okay? Not everybody thinks like that. Okay, but to really think, you know, these are the defects of samsara. And, you know, how to respond to that, you know, is I want out. Yeah, I want out. So it's not just a thing of fixing our problems from this life, because we're only going to get more problems this life. It's like, how can I get out of samsara? You know, samsara looks good. There's so much glitter in samsara, but it is really, you know, it's really a pit of it. Okay? Yeah? And so let's get ourselves out. And then with bodhicitta, let's help everybody else get out. Okay, so with that, our time today is up. We'll, you know, talk more about this, continue on with this tomorrow, but do think about it, you know. And at first, if it feels deflating, you know, your BBC talk yesterday, grieving, you know, as you practice Dharma, grieving because all the things that you thought you wanted that were going to make you happy, you're realizing now aren't going to make you happy, and you can't get them. You know, there's no security in getting them. And, you know, to see that and to just, yeah, that's the truth. But then don't just leave it like, I'm grieving that. Play out the whole scene. You get it. All those things that you've wanted in samsara, you imagine you get. And then you stop and say, now am I happy? Now do I feel fulfilled? Now do I really feel loved? Now do I really feel successful? Now do I really feel satisfied? Yeah. So it's very effective. Play out in your meditation that you get your whole samsaric dream. And then just check at the end. Now what? Am I really happy? Am I really fulfilled? Am I really secure? You know, what is real security? Because basically that's what we want, you know, security and love. What is real security? Can we find it in samsara? If we can't find it in samsara, and if samsara is just driving us crazy because we keep chasing this and we can't catch it, then what's our alternative? What is nirvana all about? What is awakening all about? Okay? And start to think about the qualities of nirvana. Think about the qualities of the path.